So we're going to take you through some of the Archery 101 basics. I'm going to show you the basic kit from a very basic beginner bow, including a bit of the other pieces.
And the reason we're doing this is because if you walk to a range, and I really recommend, we both recommend, that you actually try archery.
Yes.
Sometimes you're going to get great instruction. We're at Archery Country. These guys are fantastic here in Austin, Texas.
Super solid.
They really do an amazing job. But quality varies, and sometimes you won't get a lot of tips.
Correct.
Sometimes folks will be just checking TikTok or whatever. So
yeah,
you're going to get some fundamentals.
Yes, some basic fundamentals. This is the arm guard that I was talking about earlier. That is for safety. So you can see it's much bigger, much better protection and coverage of the actual arm itself. It's articulated for your elbow, so it's protecting your bicep all the way down to your wrist. This is the adult size version. There are kid size versions too. Because I have mine on, I'm just gonna set this aside and show you a finger glove. This is protecting your fingers. It's the same exact thing as a finger tab. It's just a glove. It's a little bit easier to use to start with and just have a good time with. I don't know if I can actually fit this one on my fingers. I think it's actually made for kids.
Hold on.
So this is something that's important.
We have more options.
Yeah.
So look, this is also what you're going to see, right?
Yeah.
You go to a shop, chances are they're going to have a whole slew of different options.
Not every shop though. Like Archery Country, watching them set up some of the kids yesterday when we were shooting here.
Gotham Archery in New York,
Yep.
in Brooklyn, or actually in, I think, Chinatown as well.
Yeah. So you can see it's literally just a glove for 3 fingers because that's what we're going to use to actually shoot the bow here. So once you have your arm guard and your finger tab on, the next thing you really need before you even get into shooting is a target. So if you check here, you have a wall of targets down at 20 yards. 20 yards is really fun to shoot at, but it's definitely way too far for a beginner. Most ranges will have a line, as this one does, at 10 yards, and we're gonna head down range and look at these mobile targets that are on wheels, which are super excellent because you can move them to different distances, and they're very easy to move. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it to like 5 yards. Essentially, the good idea of this is put it close enough so you're not gonna miss. And if you're showing somebody else how to shoot, say you've actually shot before and you're working with somebody for the first time, the whole idea is to kind of put it close enough to ensure success, because there's nothing more fun than putting arrows in the target and hopefully getting some in the yellow. This target is the target that we would shoot at 20 yards. So it's actually much smaller, kind of a bit advanced. A target size that you would put at this distance may be much bigger, where the yellow is about the size of the red. Because again, it's really fun to see arrows hitting the middle, hitting the 10 ring, or hitting the yellow spot. The closer the better, especially because if you're doing this outside, you don't want to be chasing arrows and finding them in the dirt.
Or losing many arrows, as the case sometimes might be.
Me too, it happens to everybody, but yeah, so closer, better.
So one point here, feel free to fact check me on this, but I also like putting, if I'm trying a new setup, putting it in the middle of the target as opposed to up here or down here, so that you have some margin for error, up or down, and obviously left to right.
Correct, because there's many different ways to actually shoot a bow. I'll cover a little bit of those briefly as far as how to aim, because that is part of what we're gonna do, is try to be accurate and put some arrows in the yellow spot here. So we'll head back to the line. How long have you had this bow? Because this is actually Tim's bow here.
Oh, I got this one ages ago. Well, by ages ago, I don't know, 2 years ago? I really was fascinated by this type of, let's just call it more traditional recurve type shooting. And I had shot compound and been hunting for 10 plus years with compound bow. Compound bow, from say marksmanship, so I have some background with rifle and firearms and so on. It's actually quite a smooth transition to compound. They're very similar in some respects. You have effectively a rear sight and a front sight. Won't get into all the details, but I was interested in trying to cultivate an understanding and ability to use something like this. And so I have a tendency to buy really expensive stuff or really nice stuff for whatever I think I'm going to do forever, and then I do it for a month and then I never use it again. So I was like, let me start off with something inexpensive. Sure. So this is probably 2 years ago, maybe something like that. I got this for the first time, and important to note also that you can swap out these limbs
Yep.
very easily for different weights. That was also something that was appealing to me.
Yeah, and so we're actually going to talk about the weight here in a moment, but I just wanted to ask you that because it's important that if you're interested in buying your own equipment, something like this, even though you've moved on to the most advanced bows, the highest end bows for competition's sake, you still use this pretty much every day in training.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to
No,
hog
go ahead,
the
please.
mic here,
Yeah.
but there are a couple of different ways I use this. I have a number of shoulder and elbow issues. I use this to warm up, right? And you can use it with drawing, but you can also just do basic calisthenics. There are other tools you can use for warming up, and Jake has an amazing comprehensive warm-up that I would recommend everybody check out. We'll probably maybe throw up another video or link to it.
Sure.
And then also practicing form so that you're not, like if your form is mediocre, you don't want to, in a very compromised position, be using the heaviest weight possible.
Correct.
So experimenting with something light like this. I still use this every day. I mean, literally brought this yesterday for my own practice, and this is a very light current setup.
Yeah. So in the beginning, lighter is always better. Even if you think you're strong, even if you have a physique that you can move some weight around, right? It's better to just start with lighter. The lighter you go, the less risk for injury and the better position you can get into, because as you get into the correct position, your form's better, and then you can build from there. And you don't want to start with too heavy because you're going to be really crunched up.
Super compromised. And also, just for the beefy boys out there, or girls, just because you can use some heavy weight in compound movements in the gym does not mean your archery stabilizing muscles are developed at all.
Yeah.
So be conservative.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many people have had real shoulder injuries because they picked up too heavy a bow to start with. So this is actually the exact same style of bow that's hanging on the wall here at Archery Country, where if you're coming in and you don't have equipment, you rent it. This is the exact same style bow that you're going to have, exact same finger tab and that kind of thing. So lighter is better. This is a 16-pound bow for reference. So all you big burly dudes out there, don't get a 50-pound bow, don't get a 40-pound bow. Just start with 16 and learn it, use it for training, and then you can just buy heavy limbs when you're ready to go up. They're very cheap, easy to swap, and you keep this riser, the center part, the same. So that's just really good starting point and a good tip. So now what I'm going to do is I'll take you through the absolute basics of how to approach the line, how to load the arrow into the bow, and some quick things that you're going to want to look for and try to mimic for your first day, and it'll be very successful if you actually do those things in the order that I'm going to show you. So every range will have a line or some sort of marker as a reference point. Each range is a little bit different. Outdoor ranges, generally you stand behind the line in certain venues, but no one will ever yell at you if you straddle the line in those venues. And in this range here, everything is set to this line. So it is proper to actually straddle the line 1 foot on each side of the line. So my goal here is to actually take you through the process so you actually look like you know what you're doing the first shot you take, and you're actually safe and you'll hit the target as well. Maybe not in your first shot, but quickly thereafter. So what I will want to do, actually, before I even load the arrow, we'll go over the basics that you're going to want to look like and actually try to achieve when you're at what's called full draw, when you actually draw the bow back before you let it go. So the whole idea is you want to essentially look like a letter T at full draw. So that would mean no leaning back, and your elbow is not going to be down or forward or up, because nothing looks like the letter T other than this. You'll see that I'm standing nice and straight, and I'm just looking and facing at the target. When I do that properly, it'll look something like this. So I don't have an arrow in the bow yet, and I'm going to explain to you really quick at this point is, first, like safety rule besides the arm guard is absolutely never dry fire your bow. Dry firing your bow means you're pulling it back and you're letting go of the string with no arrow in it. As I said before, in the basic 101 of archery equipment, these limbs are storing kinetic energy. And when I let it go, it has nowhere for it to go, and it's going to stay in the system, and it's going to violently tear itself apart. Pieces will go scattering everywhere, and you'll probably have some marks on your body because of that. So absolutely, under no circumstances should you ever dry fire your bow.
I have seen a number of people dry fire on traditional bows or compound, and literally they just explode. So
Parts everywhere.
Parts everywhere. So if there's not an arrow in there to absorb that kinetic force, do not let go of the string. Do not. Yeah.
Don't warm up your bow, right?
Yeah. Don't warm up your bow.
Yeah.
Don't pull the release.
No.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, you'll see some people, like myself included, when I put my bow together, you may see me pluck the string. It's just like plucking the string of a guitar. I'm not pulling it back very far. For this bow, you don't need to do that. And it's totally safe to just do this. So when you see other people at the range doing that, they're doing that for a particular reason to actually set the limbs into the riser. But that's advanced and not applicable to this scenario. It's just important to know you have to have an arrow in your bow before you let it go, okay? So most ranges actually won't let you draw back your bow without an arrow in it, especially if you're not on the line. So that's just important to know as well. Now, from there, the letter T is your basis of everything, as I've already said, but we have to talk about a couple of other things. We're gonna talk about the bow hand first, how you put your bow hand, the hand that holds the bow, into the grip. So the basis of how you put your hand properly into the bow is you literally tell your bow to stop. That's literally how I put my hand into the bow, and I put the grip onto my hand in this position as if I'm telling it to stop. And then I curl my fingers down and relax them against the front of the bow, and you'll see that my knuckles are roughly at a 45-degree angle, but I'm in that stop position just with my fingers relaxed down. Now, this is where you may want to have a finger sling because you can see I'm only using my index finger to kind of hold on to the bow. And even though this is called a bow grip, I'm not gripping the bow. I'm just cradling it.
Why don't you grip it?
So you don't grip it because you can twist the bow and torque the bow different directions and add influence to the system, which makes the arrows hit different directions every single time you let it go.
It'll also add a lot more stress to that bow arm.
Yeah, so you'll have tons of actual stress in the forearm, and overall you'll fatigue much quicker, and this 16-pound bow will feel like a 61-pound bow by the end of the day. So it's definitely much better to just cradle the bow. I'm saying stop because I'm just actually resisting the bow from coming back towards me and giving it a platform to sit on. So this here is a finger sling. It's actually just a shoelace. Your average range, like Archery Country or Gotham.
Yeah, they'll have basically loop, and then you tighten it, and then it goes around, loop, and you tighten it.
Yeah.
This is the
cat's cradle version.
Cat's cradle version.
So it's a bit advanced. We won't get into that at this point, but the idea is the same of how the string catches the bow as it jumps out of your hand, and it's impossible to drop the bow. So there's no fear to actually death grip the bow. Like I said, even though it's a grip, my fingers aren't on the bow. Just my index finger is resting on the front of it. Okay, so that's the bow grip. Now we have to talk about the anchor. The anchor is exactly what it sounds like. Something solid, something that doesn't move, and that is your connection of your hand onto your face. The easiest way to do it for me that I recommend is taking this groove of your hand between where your thumb meets the actual palm, and you're gonna take that groove and you're gonna put it underneath your jawbone right here. Another alternative method is to take your index finger and touch the corner of your mouth. Either one of those is fine to start with. The idea is to do it the same way every single time and to not change it from shot to shot. Because we don't have a rear sight on the bow, so how consistent you are in placing your hand on your face is directly related to your accuracy.
So just to exaggerate, right? If you're here, imagine this hand is stationary and everything's pivoting around this. If I pick this up, right, arrow shooting way down here, it's gonna be shooting way up. So the consistency of this anchor, wherever you end up having it, super, super critical.
Very, very much so. So either touching the fingertip to the corner of the mouth, like so, or taking the crook of your hand there and putting it under the jawbone. Either one's sufficient, and you can see my elbow is roughly level. So I look like the letter T here, and I'm not high, down, forward, all crunched up, things like that. It's pretty standard to see a lot of people, especially grown men for whatever reason, to actually pull their bow back like this. And they look like this at full draw for their first few shots. And it takes a little bit of time to actually coach them to bring their elbow up, back, and around to get to that letter T position. That's really the basic position that you're really gonna wanna hit. And once you get to that position, I'm gonna then take my arrow point, and I'm gonna start by putting the arrow point in the yellow as I see it at full draw. And when I let go of the string, I'm only letting go of the string itself. I'm not going to pull the bow back. I'm just going to get a little bit of tension and pluck the string, as I've described already. And I'm just going to let the string almost cut through my fingers. Like it's an instantaneous let go of the tension of the string. And the arrow will propel forward and hit the target. And then we'll make an adjustment so we can hit the middle the next shot. Now that we've covered the basics of the actual shooting position, we're going to show you how to load the arrow into the bow. If you notice, this arrow has two different color fletchings. There's a green one and two white ones, and the nock is aligned to these colors. The nock is this piece that clips onto the string, and you'll see this brass piece here, which is called the nocking point. And you're going to take the nock and click it underneath the nocking point, just like that. And you want to make sure that the different colored fletching, what would be actually called the cock fletching in archery, is facing towards you or away from the bow. That gives the arrow proper clearance, and it goes by the bow without being disturbed, and then that way it's much more accurate. And you'll see that the arrow is actually sitting on what's called an arrow rest here. It's a piece of plastic that the arrow is just sitting on top of. It's also very common to see that these style bows, that there will be no arrow rest, and it will sit on what's called the shelf, and that's totally acceptable too. It's just going to depend on if your bow has an arrow rest or not. This one does, so I'm going to use that. And now I'm ready to go. So I'm standing on the line here, 1 foot on each side of the line, about shoulder width apart. And what I'm going to do is use 3 fingers, and I'm going to put all 3 fingers underneath the arrow on the string, and I'm going to touch the arrow and touch the nock here like this. And then I will put my bow hand into the proper position, as I've already explained. And as I pull back, I will hit my anchor point, pause for a minute, put my arrow point in the middle, and let go of the string. And you'll see that my arrow actually hit high of the target face. That's because I'm so close, and I use the arrow point as my aiming reference. So it doesn't mean I did anything wrong, it just means my trajectory was a little off. So it's a very simple equation. I'm gonna do the same exact thing, load the arrow in the same exact position, do my best to hit the same anchor point, and you can see that the arrow hit about 2 inches or so high of the target face. So I'm going to do the same thing and aim on the bottom with the arrow point and put it on the bottom of the paper. Do the same thing. And you'll see that I was just a little bit off, still just a little bit low. And hopefully on this third shot, I'll get one in the middle with a slight adjustment. So now I'm just slightly left of the yellow, and I just, play this back and forth game of picking a place to actually put the arrow point and continue shooting some arrows. And it's really just that simple. There's a couple of other little things that you might notice that I'm doing, something that's called a follow through. You'll see as I let go, my arm and hand move backwards as I'm letting go of the string. That is because as I pull back the bow, I'm building tension up in my system. And this is the number one thing that will make you look like a real archer, is to have a good follow through, because I'm maintaining my tension back, that I'm pulling against the string and just letting the string cut through my fingers the moment I want to let go of the string. And that's gonna let the release, me letting go of the string, be very clean and very consistent. And it's a very natural, fluid motion. It's like throwing a baseball. If I let go of the ball and stop my arm like this, nobody throws an object like that. You let go of the object and follow through. It's the same exact thing in archery. It's just a slightly different application of the movement. So there's really nothing more than that to get you started in archery, of the basics of bow hand placement, anchor placement, the letter T, standing straight, 1 foot on each side of the line, and then following through. It's just very, very simple, and anyone can enjoy it. Yesterday here at the range, there was probably some kids in the 5 to 6 range. It's really actually a good starting point to get kids introduced to archery. Really, if they can, kind of hold their attention for a little bit and follow some basic instruction, they're a great candidate to start shooting some archery. And that's actually, I shot my first arrow at 6 years old on my 6th birthday, and I've really never stopped since then.
Red Ryder BB gun.
You should try out.
Yeah, and try to prevent your kids from
Yeah.
shooting arrows straight into the ceiling, because it may cause the roof to leak.
Yeah.
All right, so a couple of things that I'll mention as someone who's pretty new to all of this. So the first is, I'll just switch spots for a second. If you want to make a bunch of people pucker their anuses at the shooting range, you can start doing this, right? Loading up like you're playing the violin or something. This is going to eat up a lot of space on either side. So try not, yeah, exactly, boom. Now you're doing this to people. And when I competed at the end of January in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, literally the person in front of me was here. And there was another person behind me, roughly the same distance. So what that means is, as Jake was doing, rather than loading this like a crossbow, he's got this right here. It's kind of helpful to prop it between the legs. And then you're taking this out and coming in here. Just a couple of tips for beginners. You see how I'm kind of chopsticking here with my fingers to hold that there. Then you can like slide this down and notice, because there are a million different ways to do this, but slide this down like this, and then kind of sneaking the fingers around and then pulling back like that, okay? There are like a lot of different ways that people do this. Some people come in like this and then put it in like this. I prefer, at this point, kind of loading it into the chopsticks, sliding this down like so, and then just pulling it back like that.
Yep.
And you're nice and self-contained here. So it's a good habit to get into, because my feeling is, why not practice as if you're going to compete, right? That's going to hone good habits. And then, how much do you want to wrap your fingers here?
Yeah, so basically the rule of thumb is to never go past the first knuckle. You're going to want to stay towards the fingertip side of things. So you're not going to grab it deep like a bear claw. You're going to just hold it on the fingertips like a hook.
Mm-hmm. Get these fingers out of the way.
We used to, in my club, call that the Boy Scout salute, because that is very close to what it is.
And then that gives you this webbing between the index and thumb that you can then use when you come in here, let's just say, depending on your anchor point. There are a bunch of different places.
And some other things that he's actually doing there, if you go back to full draw, is you'll see that his hand is not only anchored on his jawbone here, but the string is actually touching the front of his nose and the front of his face. Because as he draws back the bow, the arrow is going to be very close to his face and very close to his eye. But because you've shot enough archery, you know that that's not a safety issue. And it's genuinely not. So part of anchoring is drawing the bow all the way back, and that string touching the front of your nose as an extra anchor point. Because the more points of reference you can have, the more solid it is, and the more consistent you are.
Yeah, totally. And just because you may get many different types of advice, there are a lot of different approaches to this. So you'll notice a fair number of very competent barebow shooters in particular, right, where you don't have the stabilizers or the sights or whatever, will have an anchor point. They will not have the string on their nose. They'll have it somewhere else, and they might be all the way up here. Could be any number of places. But as a starting point, it is really helpful to have the middle of the nose right here as one of your reference points. Okay, so next question for you, Jake. A lot of people will kind of do this, right?
That's too good a form.
Yeah, it's too good. But they'll do something like this. So it's all bicep, right? They're kind of pulling it straight in, which makes sense, right? Because they want to look straight down the arrow, so they're doing something like this. Mm-hmm. Assuming we're standing correctly, and for simplicity, you can stand kind of with a line through the heels, pointing straight at the target. Jake is a little more open. I also tend to shoot like this, but just to take that variability out, you can stand like this. My question for Jake is, because you can get plenty advanced here, but just for someone who's going in to the range. So the first thing, like mistake number one, if you're squeezing the grip, you're not holding it correctly, right? So think of it almost like a push-up more than a grip,
yes.
Right? You can see my hands, like it's very, very light. One more thing I'll say here is, so you see this lifeline right here? And this took me a while to figure out. to the extent that you can stay on one side, not crossing this, which can introduce all sorts of torque. So you'll see here.
Yeah, you'll see that the bow grip doesn't touch towards the pinky side of that lifeline. It's staying only on the thumb side of that lifeline.
So it's like that, exactly. But for people who are inclined, as most people will be when they start, to kind of pull to the face of the bicep, how would you suggest they get to this position in simplest terms possible?
So the number one way is to not aim your bow before you pull it back. So if I'm looking at you, and trust me, I won't let go of the string here, just for the viewer's sake, I won't pre-line the sight and put the arrow where I want it to go. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take the arrow out now that I'm actually going to pull back. I'm not going to aim at all until I actually get back to full draw and then align the bow. But the easiest way to actually pull it back correctly is to think of the fingers as just a hook, as we just covered, and then everything else from the hook to the shoulder is just under tension. It's going to follow movement. Just let it follow the movement. The movement is going to come from the shoulder. I'm just going to move the shoulder around and behind me. Think of pull starting a lawnmower or some sort of lawn implement. You're not going to use your bicep because your arm would fall off. You use your whole body to pull the thing back. So the same exact thing applies here. I'm just a hook here. I'm not aiming, and I'm just going to move my shoulder around and behind me. So it's a very simple, natural movement where I'm rotating. You can also see my torso rotates as I pull the bow back, and then I anchor in place. Then I aim after I've anchored. And that kind of covers how to pull the bow back properly, you know, to get into that letter T position and move efficiently without binding up and getting into this elbow down crunched position.
Yeah, so think of basically, like, especially elbow to hook as like as a chain, right?
Yeah.
As if you were doing a deadlift or something like that. It is just connecting this portion of your upper arm and shoulder, which is rotating around.
Correct.
And you really don't need to aim. There are different approaches to this,
Yes.
so no offense to
No, of course. Yeah.
some of the amazing Korean shooters out there. But you really, for the purposes of what we're doing and practicing as a novice, you don't need to aim until you're effectively at full anchor.
Yes, correct.
Or close to it. Right?
Because there's a lot of movement going on.
There's
This
a lot
is
of
the first
movement,
time
so
you're
this
shooting a
is-
bow, so it feels funny. So there's no point in being precise with pulling back the bow. And in fact, at our level and at the highest level in the game, there's generally no aiming until I'm here. I'm not aiming until that time.
Yeah. So in other words, if we're here, have that hook, right? And in terms of order of operations, maybe this would be helpful for folks. This might be getting a little too technical, but so you've loaded everything up, then you've set your hook. Now, since I have some tension on this, I can set this hand, right? Kind of choke in here and then rotate down. Now I have that position. And then we won't talk about breath cycle yet, but here, and then we come up. I'm looking at the target, but I'm not aiming with the arrow just yet. So I'm looking at the target, come up, boom, boom, okay? And now I'm really aiming, and then that's when you would release. I'm not gonna release because we don't dry fire, right, kids? Now, the other thing I will mention, and maybe, I don't think this is too complex because this can frustrate people really early on. Do you want to speak to both eyes open, one eye closed?
Sure.
Because Jake and I shoot very differently, and there are good reasons for that.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that?
Sure. So when things align correctly, when you are right eye dominant and you're shooting your bow right-handed, it's, in my opinion, best to use both eyes.
Yeah, so a lot of people might not even realize.
Yeah.
Just like you might be right-handed or left-handed for the purposes of aiming.
Yeah. You have eye dominance. So you have an eye that you actually aim with. Now, eye aiming and eye dominance aren't always the same thing, so that's kind of something important to know. And many shops out there don't really know that there's a difference between the two. The basic test that everyone does, and it does work, I would say 80% of the time, so this is a good way to start, is to actually make a triangle with your hands, just like this, nice and small. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your arms and put them at arm's length just like this. I'm gonna put the camera lens in the middle of that triangle, and I'm gonna use both eyes open like so. And you'll see that you see my right eye through this triangle. I'm already very confident in my aiming eye, and I know that I'm using my right eye. But then what you do is you pull back your arm slowly, and whatever eye it goes to is your dominant eye. It can also be your aiming eye, so it works for most people. Another thing you can do is use your pointer finger, point to something, you'll see it goes to my right eye, left arm, right eye, both arms together, right eye. That's showing you that I'm aiming with my right eye. And that is the eye that I'm going to then use as a reference. Because I'm going to shoot right-handed and I'm right eye aiming, I can use both eyes. But Tim here actually is not right eye dominant, but shoots right-handed.
Yeah, I'm cross-eye dominant. So what that means is, and tell me if this test is bunk, maybe this isn't a good one, but another test you see often is people will come out here and they'll say, keep both eyes open, get, say, the camera lens in that little pocket, and then close one eye, right? And so if I close my right eye, so I'm using my left eye, it stays where it was. If I close my left eye, all of a sudden I'm way over here.
Yeah. So that's another good movement that you can do as far as to check the eye dominance as well. It's very helpful.
Yeah, so what that means is, for me, if I keep both eyes open, which would be great, I would pay quite a bit to be able to do that.
Neurologically, it's actually best to keep both eyes open.
Keep both eyes open. It doesn't work. I end up with this.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's not good. There's no way it'll work. So then for a long time, what I was doing is I was closing my left eye, but gets really uncomfortable after a while. So now what I do, I don't know if it's over there, I'll show you. It's a little jank, but it works, thanks, is I use any kind of hat, and I just use a piece of cardboard and I block my left eye. But now what I can do is I can keep both eyes open, and it actually makes a huge, huge difference neurologically and also in terms of comfort. So now I'm coming here, and you can see I'm using my right eye, but my left eye is open. Yeah, boom. And there are other tools you can use. I'll just show, thanks. I'll take that off. Let me show you one more toy.
And many archery ranges actually will have eye patches available. If your son or your daughter is having eye dominance issues with this whole thing, but they're really coordinated right-handed, but potentially trying to aim with that left eye, they oftentimes have eye patches to throw over that left eye just to help really quick.
There are also these types of clips that you can put on a baseball cap, and you can flip them.
They're little blinders,
out of the way.
essentially.
It's a blinder that you can put on the side of the hat. I have just found this somewhat difficult to get in the right position, and sometimes this gets in the way.
Yep.
Not always, but it can get in the way. So a few other common mistakes that everybody makes. I did this. I've done all of these, right? So one other one to look out for, I'll just turn, is if you come here and then you're kind of moving your head to the string, right? You don't want to move your head to the string.
Yeah.
So, and then I'll mention one other one, and I'm not going to dry fire, but is when you come back here and then you just open the hand like this. There are people who shoot very, very, very well if they can do it consistently. If you're looking at Olympic recurve, you're going to be building back tension, boom, and when you let go, there's this natural kind of break. That has been a huge challenge for me, actually, to make that fluid and
Be one part.
Exactly, one part. So what I did for a long time, the slow motion is agonizing to watch, is I would come here, boom, two-part.
Really apparent.
It was archery theater. But let's talk about the head first, because even if people do this for a while, I think it's fine.
Sure. The head thing is pretty simple. It's all about draw the bow to your face, not your head to the bow. So I'm not going to go like this. I'm going to pull the bow back to my face. That's just super simple. And if you look, number one rule was letter T. I don't look like the letter T here, right?
Yeah. And if you are moving your head also, keep in mind, archery is a game of replication.
Yes.
Consistency. So if you are adding any variables that can be different from shot to shot, you're going to be inconsistent. Therefore, if you're moving your head, chances are it's not going to be exactly the same every time. So all the more reason to keep that T posture.
So the head being still, if his head were to go forward, his draw length would be shorter.
Yeah, even if it's very subtle.
That draw length being shorter affects the trajectory of the arrow. And as you go back further.
Or if I start leaning back.
Yeah, it's different. There's variance.
The arrow is going to really move around a lot.
Yep. So that's simple to fix. The release is a little harder to train. That one I would recommend standing on a stretch band. You hold on to it with your release hand, the hand that's on the string, and you just let the hand relax naturally and let the stretch band push the fingers out of the way. It's an instantaneous release of the string, the stretch band in this case for the demo, and that's how you let go of the string, and you keep that tension coming back that you're pulling with the shoulder. Another couple like cardinal sins per se of archery is standing on the line like this, where I'm facing the target instead of straddling the line. So it's very common to see a lot of people stand like this.
You might look at them and be like, nobody does that. No, people
There's a lot of people that will look exactly like this, especially grown men. I cannot tell you how many grown men that are burly, strong, lift weights, and they look like this the first few shots they're shooting. But you give this same bow to a 6-year-old, it's ridiculous. It happens all the time. I don't know what it is. I think it's just human nature and type A personality maybe that just, I have to control everything and they're shaking and having a hard time. And their son that is shooting their 16-pound bow is out shooting them because it's just natural to be in this kind of position. It feels much better. The movement's more fluid and ultimately it's way more comfortable. So yeah, I mean, really that's kind of the basic things that you can do wrong and a quick fix to it actually.
Yeah, so quick recap. Rule number 1, straddle the line. Rule number 2, no crossbow loading. Don't do this because it'll annoy everybody. So I like to put it in between the legs. And then you have this right here. Odd color towards you, in this case, down here, below the knocking point. Boom. And then 3 fingers under for right now. Just keep it simple, right? You just boom, up. And then from here, I'm getting a little bit of tension on the hook, which is not too deep. It's not right on the fingertips because they'll slip off. It's kind of right before the first joint, let's just say. Then I'm getting this bow hand set, kind of choking in and then dropping it down, being sure not to cross the lifeline.
As if he's saying, stop to the bow, remember?
Right here.
Yep.
Okay. And then from here, I'm going to be looking at the target, but I don't need to aim from the very beginning. I'm not looking at the arrow tip. Keeping this all as one unit, elbow to the fingertips, using the back, boom. I have this webbing against the jaw. That's the anchor point, and I'm touching the middle of my nose. Based on what Jake was doing earlier, I'm gonna focus kind of at the bottom of the target, and it's still high.
But everybody's different. Everybody's body build is different, shape of their face is different.
And I also realized I had both eyes open. And being cross-eye dominant, that's not gonna work.
No.
So, but you get the basic idea, and then to the extent possible, I'll take one more shot and do this slightly
Just
fast.
know that archery is a sport of constant learning. No matter how good you think you are, no matter how much you think you know, there's always more to learn. And in the beginning, it may seem overwhelming, but these basic steps, basic tips will get you in a much more solid position to be repeatable. So even though Tim shot 2 arrows, he put 2 of them basically
right
that he can put both hands around or one hand around because he did the same thing both shots, which is the idea. First you get a group and then you can aim in a slightly different position and make some slight adjustments and eventually you'll have them stacked in the middle and really start to enjoy archery.
Races.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Be safe, have fun, guys.